Welcome to the Midlife Mom Podcast. I'm your host, Lisa Lewis. I'm a coach for midlife moms with a background as a mental health therapist. I help midlife moms who are feeling lost and stuck to be able to discover and create their dream midlife. Let's do this. Welcome back to the Midlife Mom Podcast. I am your host, Lisa Lewis, and I'm grateful that you are joining me today for the podcast episode, which is entitled Chasing External Fixes for Internal Feelings. I'm going to get into that in a second. I am noticing my voice sounds kind of sleepy. Today's my day off, which doesn't necessarily end up being a day off because I end up working, but my day off from seeing clients. And today I've just been feeling a little bit tired and just feeling like my body needed a chance to have some recharging. And it's funny because I used to be a napper when my kids were home because I would be so tired, especially in the earlier days when they were young or when I was pregnant. And I've gotten where I do pretty well with having energy during the day, but today was not one of those days. And so I laid down to rest for a little bit and definitely fell asleep. And so I woke up and said, I need to record my podcast. So if my voice sounds a little sleepy, I'm still trying to wake up. Maybe some of you can relate to this. Okay, so back to the topic for today. I see often, and this is why I'm doing this podcast today, I see this professionally, and I also see this within myself or with people I'm close with, that sometimes we will try to solve for something that's going on, mostly like a painful emotion, with something outside of us. And again, this is usually related to a feeling we don't want to feel. And we are looking at something that's going on outside of ourselves and saying, if that changed, if this thing changed, then I would not be feeling this way. And there's all kinds of things that we might use to solve for this feeling, as if it does need to be solved for. As you may have heard me say in other podcasts, I am a big proponent of just allowing ourselves to feel whatever we're feeling, because as we do that, it usually doesn't last as long. Now, that can vary depending on what's going on, but it's a way of not resisting it. And when people are using something outside of themselves or something to put into their bodies to solve for a painful emotion, this might look like food, drugs, alcohol, some type of chasing a dopamine hit or excitement, shopping, sex, or other people to solve for that feeling. Now, I'm not saying that some of those things are necessarily bad. Like food, for example, we need food to eat. That's obviously something that sustains our lives. When it becomes a problem is when we're going to it to solve for a painful feeling, and it's being used in a way that's not helpful for our bodies. Or shopping, if there's not room in the budget to go and spend certain amounts of money, but a person does that because they want to feel better, that's when it becomes a problem. So hopefully that makes sense. It depends on how it's being used to solve for the painful emotion. So if this is happening, one thing that can be really helpful is to notice what is being felt, identifying the connecting need to that feeling, and then work to resolve that need. There's a really good analogy that I learned a few years ago from a fellow therapist, and he compared these feelings and needs to a vehicle. And if a vehicle has something happen within it, say it has low tire pressure, we'll often see a light on the dashboard indicating that the tire pressure is low. And so when we see that, it's an indicator that the car needs air in the tire. And so that's how he uses this feelings and needs of we are feeling something and there may be a need associated with it. And that is actually how we solve for what's going on inside of us, is allowing ourselves to feel it, but also identify what the need is. So I'm going to give a few examples to see if I can help in explaining this better so that you can conceptually understand this and also maybe even put it into practice in your life. Let's say there's a scenario where a mom is not having as much contact as she would like with her children. Like maybe some of her children have left home, or maybe all of them have left home and they're not reaching out as much. Maybe they're not texting or they're not calling. And she is feeling unloved. And maybe what she does is she reaches out to them continuously. She's texting them a lot. She's calling them a lot because she's feeling unloved and she's trying to feel loved. And so that's what she does. She keeps reaching out to them. Now, the feeling again underneath this could be unloved, and the need is to feel loved and connected. So we might think, well, if the kids would just reach out to her more, then she would feel loved and connected. But that's trying to solve for that problem outside of herself. I mean, that would be really nice if the kids did that, but this is something that she has to solve for internally. So if she is feeling unloved and the need is to feel loved and connected, how can she get that? Yes, she could still reach out and text and call her kids, but if she's doing it a lot and they're not returning it, the kids also may be getting annoyed that mom's calling so much. So how do you resolve this need? How does she get love and connected? Well, there's other ways, is to feel love and connection with herself. And what would that look like? If we are needing to feel loved and connected, and we are not solving for it with somebody outside of ourselves, which that's, obviously we need that. We need that connection with other humans. But what if we're not feeling loved and connected within ourselves? What if we're not loving ourselves? What if we're not making connections with ourselves? One way that could happen is to do things with ourselves that we enjoy doing. We're going to feel connected to ourselves when we're doing things that we really enjoy doing. We will love ourselves more as we appreciate and see ourselves and our efforts, whatever it is we're trying to do. And even just the way we're talking to ourselves. Are we talking down to ourselves? Are we beating ourselves up? We're not going to feel love for ourselves if we are doing that. So even being aware of how you're talking to yourself could help you to feel more love for yourself. I'm going to give you another example that's kind of similar to this, but a little bit different. Let's just say you have a woman that is divorced and she is feeling disconnected and unloved. And she would really, really, really like to have a partner, to find someone that could be a spouse for her. And the feelings that are underneath the disconnection and the loneliness, or the need related to the loneliness and the disconnection, is to feel loved, is to feel connected, is to feel acknowledged or understood. And she's thinking, well, if I have a husband or if I have a partner or a boyfriend, then he can help meet these feelings, or he can help with these feelings and meet my needs of feeling acknowledged, loved, understood, recognized. And so she's looking for that. Now, that's not a bad thing to be looking for that. That, again, makes sense that she would want to have that. But until she finds that, how does she meet those needs on her own? How does she love herself? Again, that goes back to the answer from the last one. Or how does she acknowledge herself? How does she understand herself? It's really hard to expect somebody else to love and understand us and recognize us when we can't even give that to ourselves. If we have no idea how to do that for ourselves and we're not doing it for ourselves, but yet we're expecting something outside of us, another person, to give that to us, that's hard. So the person or this woman can practice really loving herself, acknowledging herself, seeing her in her efforts to provide for herself, to take care of herself physically, to take care of her mental and emotional health. She can see herself and say, I see you trying. I see your efforts. again, this is the way that we are talking to ourselves, or even appreciating herself when she does things that she's wanting to do or showing up in a way she wants to show up. She can appreciate her efforts. Let me give you one last example, and this one is about me. When my husband and I were in the middle of raising our children, he was the one that worked outside the home and provided for our family, and I was at home and I took care of the kids and the household. That was what, we had worked out. And I remember that I used to worry a lot about finances. And there really wasn't a reason to worry about finances because our needs were being met. But I think at the time I was believing that we needed to be in a certain place financially or to be preparing differently. Like I remember at the time it was this big push. Oh, we shouldn't have debt on our house. We should be paying the debt off on our house. And I had been listening to a guru in the field, and that was what I thought needed to happen. And so I kept talking to my husband about it, like, oh, we need to pay off the house. We need to start working on paying that off the house. And at one point, my husband said to me, Lisa, I am doing what I can. If this is really important to you, then you might need to find another way to work on this. And, he was very kind to me, but very direct of like, I'm doing what I can. And I look back on that now, and the feeling that was coming up for me was insecurity. And as I learned more about myself, I recognized that this traced back to childhood stuff related to even my basic needs being met. And so it was just some insecurity and some fear that was coming up. That's why I was thinking, oh, we need to do this. Because I thought if this happened, that I would feel secure, that I would not feel worried. And again, I was trying to solve for it outside of myself and, kind of harassing my husband about it. And the need underneath these feelings of fear and insecurity was security. And the way that I actually ended up meeting that need for security was working on myself and like, you are secure, you are safe. This is not the same situation as what you had as a child. And I had to have that awareness that part of it was my inner child showing up that was fearful. And so I worked on that feeling I worked on that need to feel secure by working on myself and providing that security to myself by the way I taught to myself and the way I even thought about our finances. Now, years later, there were some job situations and there was a need for more finances to be coming in. And at that time, again, I looked internally, what can I do to help with this? And that's actually when I decided to go back to school. And I thought, this is important to me to be able to help provide financially and to, give me some more security in this area where, maybe the finances were very tight, then I can do something about it. And I did. That was how I took care of that need later. So just to summarize, it can happen where we will chase an external fix for internal feelings. And the way to be aware of this, when we're looking to something else or someone outside of ourselves to fix something, is to turn inward. Turn inward and ask yourself, what am I feeling? Allow yourself to feel those feelings. It's okay. It's okay, whatever you're feeling. And then ask, what is the need? What's the need underneath this? And then as you're allowing yourself to feel those feelings, see if you can resolve that need within yourself, that you are the one that has the power to do that. This is incredible work to do. I have been doing this work on myself and I continue to do this work on myself. And it has been a game changer for me. And I hope that it will help you as well. I would love to hear what you think of the podcast and, if this is something that resonated with you. If you haven't left a review for this podcast, I would love a 5-star review and feedback if you feel it warrants it. And you could also reach out to me on Instagram, Midlife Mom Coach on Instagram. And I will see you next week on the podcast. If you're enjoying what you are learning on this podcast and would like to learn more about working with me as your coach, you can message me at midlifemomcoach@gmail.com, or you can reach out to me on Instagram. Midlife Mom Coach is my handle. We'll see you next time on the podcast.